This Sunday's Gospel is a resurrection appearance story unique to Luke. On the first day after the crucifixion, two followers of Jesus abandon their loyalty to the failed Messiah, Jesus. They leave the other disciples and travel from Jerusalem to Emmaus. Along the way, the risen Jesus pops out of nowhere and joins them as they walk. Although they don't recognize Jesus initially, he soon opens their eyes to the Scriptures, and in the breaking of the bread, discloses himself to them. Luke chapter 24, verse 13 through 35. That very day, the first day of the week, two of Jesus' disciples were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them, but their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply,
"Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?"
And he replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him,
"The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, how our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those with us went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but him they did not see."
And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke! Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them what referred to him in all the Scriptures. As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression that he was going on farther. But they urged him,
"Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, and the day is almost over."
So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that, while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the Scriptures to us?" So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11, and those with them who were saying, "The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way, and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Scholar John Pilch explains that the careful gospel reader ought to note 3 themes offered by this passage. First off, the two disciples know the Scriptures, but fail to understand them. So the author we call Luke presents the risen Jesus, giving the first ever Easter homily. The intention of Jesus is to provide the disillusioned pair with the correct meaning of the Scriptures. The second theme is Eucharistic. The meal shared with the risen Jesus, which complements his opening the Scriptures along the way, has obvious Eucharistic overtones. The disciples are lifted up as the risen one is revealed to them at table fellowship in the breaking of the bread. The third theme is Luke consistently portraying the followers of Jesus as being united, one in belief and one in table fellowship. The author of Luke Acts shows this unity at his Last Supper scene, with meal plus table talk instruction. This is the same thing he does in Acts, following Peter's Pentecost speech, showing the unity of the new followers of Jesus. Pilch says that for Luke, the Eucharist is a rite that symbolizes full communion of mind and heart. My friends, this Sunday's Gospel says that the disciples were on their way to a village named Emmaus. 21st century Christians traveling to modern-day Israel are often shocked when they discover that 6 different Holy Land sites claim to be the historical Emmaus. Where exactly is Emmaus? Probing this question invites sympathy with the dismayed pair of disciples traveling along the way. We too need the correct understanding of Scripture. John Pilch offers 4 popular possibilities. One candidate for Emmaus is Al-Latrun village, overlooking the way between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. It was Eusebius, the patron saint of fundamentalists, who gave our earliest record, identifying this village as the Emmaus found in Luke Acts. But prior to Christianity, which began in 325 Common Era, Messianists, that would be pre-Christian believers in Jesus, may have lived in the village since the 1st century. Julius Africanus is the earliest Messianist we know who resided there. In 221, Africanus championed the village before Rome and achieved for it the privileged status of a Roman polis called Nicopolis. The Byzantine tradition always has maintained that the village is the Lucan Emmaus, but in 639 a plague killed everyone there, and for a long while it was abandoned. In recent times, Al-Latrun was the site of violent bloodshed in the 1948 war. So, is Al-Latrun village Emmaus? According to archaeologists, it's extremely doubtful. Al-Latrun village is 160 stadia, 31 kilometers from Jerusalem, not 7 miles. We have conflicting ancient manuscripts of Luke. Some read that Emmaus is only 60 stadia from the temple city. This suggests other villages, such as Abu Ghosh or Qubeiba, as more probable candidates. So maybe Emmaus is Abu Ghosh. This town, named after the current ruling clan from feudal Palestine, is situated on the Tel Aviv-Jerusalem highway, just 10 miles west of Jerusalem. Once a village on the old Jaffa Road, it was the place where the Ark of the Covenant rested for 2 decades. Now this model of Israeli-Palestinian coexistence, and the famed hummus capital of Israel, sits in the valley, but in Old Testament times it was located atop the hill. In the 1100s, a group of embarrassingly ignorant Western Christian warriors, almost as mindless as they were bloodthirsty, called Crusaders, identified Abu Ghosh as Emmaus. Why? They were completely ignorant about Latrun. In typically dense Crusader style, they measured 60 stadia from Jerusalem, looked for the nearest village, and voila, they discovered Emmaus. In 1187, with the Battle of the Horns of Hattin, the Crusaders were beaten by Salah ad-Din. Because travelers to Jerusalem began to use a different route, Abu Ghosh lost its importance for Christian pilgrims. So, a new place was needed to serve as the location for Emmaus. The town of Al-Qubeiba, located 11 miles northwest of Jerusalem along the northern west bank, became the next location to be identified as Emmaus. Pilch explains that during the era of the idiot Crusader occupation, sometime between 1114 and 1164, the canons of the Holy Sepulchre had founded this Frankish village to intensify the agriculture of the region in order to get better yields of food. They named it Parva Mahomeria, in Latin for small mosque. This could be because a small Muslim shrine already existed there. Al-Qubeiba means a little dome or small cupola. A Franciscan presence began in 1217. Pilch explains a phenomena that frequently happened in the Holy Land. Later, pilgrims arrive in a place, and they use holy assumption and immaculate perception to define this or that place as being related to the life of Christ. These new pilgrims were certain that Al-Qubeiba had to be Emmaus, because it was 60 stadia from Jerusalem. It's always case closed for closed minds. But there is another small, humble, mostly overlooked place that is the single most probable candidate for the Emmaus referred to by Luke. Pilch explains that following the Judean War against Rome in 66-70 Common Era, Vespasian assigned 800 discharged veterans to take up residence at a place called Emmaus. This colonia for retired soldiers totally absorbed the little village. So for centuries it kept the name Colonia. Located near contemporary Matzah, this Palestinian village was abandoned in 1948. Now what remains of Colonia is roughly 3 to 4 miles away from Jerusalem, so the round trip between the two places is 60 stadia, or about 7 miles. For 2 disciples to reach the village on an afternoon walk is plausible, as is the idea of two men jumping up from a dinner table and heading back to Jerusalem. But please don't put too much faith in the unknown author we call Luke getting the facts right. While he certainly is the most talented writer in the New Testament, Luke was far removed from the geography of Herodian Syro-Palestine. He gets things wrong all the time. So what is the deal with all this archaeology and geography and location information? Well, my friends, there is more to this presentation than mere trivia. Those who read the Bible too literally, or those who understand their beliefs too literally, are inescapably bound to fall face first into serious problems. Holy assumption and immaculate perception are terrible obstacles to faith and respectful Bible reading. Recall how Jesus opened the scriptures in this Sunday's gospel. It was only because the two disciples were already familiar with the scriptures that Jesus was able to correct their misunderstanding. The scholarship presented in these videos offers similar assistance to interested contemporary believers. As Pilch says, blind faith, after all, is a curious gift to return to the creator of human intelligence.